Deeply in. Letting go. Deeply in. Letting go. Deeply in. Letting go. 2 times more. Letting go and stop. Just stop. Witness. Without air in the lungs, you are able to say much more than normally. Why? Because we changed your chemistry. Carbon dioxide went out, O2 went up, filled up all the cells, and the pH levels go up. Then we are able to tap into the central nervous system, and at the end we got the brainstem. And that's the place of the pineal gland, hypothalamus, pituitary gland. And the pineal gland makes the secretion of adrenaline, the dangerous secretion. Normally we do not get into it because of our shallow breathing. But this is the way to get into the most primitive part, the reptilian brain, without many difficulties, and fend off bacteria, getting better into the endocrine systems. We'll talk about it later. We are past 1:10 in minutes, and you're still on. That shows that the capacity to fill yourself up with oxygen is a lot more than we normally use. And as we do not use it, we are not making a use of the full capacity of our physiology. Now we found out we got a different layers, and we never use it. And this is the way to learn to use it, to tap in and bang into the primitive brain, into the endocrine systems, immune system, the way nature has meant it to be. Everybody is able to do it. 140.
The explosion, smeared with blood and brain. Remarkably, he was able to get back to his life after only 2 months after the accident, reporting that he felt better in every respect with no lingering pain. His personality, however, was not the same. The physician that attended to him said, the balance between his intellectual faculties and animal propensities seems to have been destroyed. Before the accident, he was described as having an iron frame and iron will. But the damage to Gage's prefrontal cortex resulted in a total loss of social inhibitions and self-control. Virtually anybody without brain damage would have better self-control than Phineas Gage, but most of us are not always 100% in control of ourselves. If we were, life would be significantly easier. Going on a diet, all you need to do is make the decision to no longer want or like cheesecake. And come tax season, just dial up your excitement to make a due diligence checklist. Most of the time, we wish our prefrontal cortex would call the shots. The prefrontal cortex's job is essentially to bias the brain towards doing the harder thing. It's your prefrontal cortex that pushes you out of your warm bed to go to the gym. One of the reasons things like this aren't always that easy is that your brain's reward circuit tries to get you to do what it has decided is excellent for survival or reproduction. The general message from the reward circuit is do what feels good. So while your prefrontal cortex may be trying to keep you on the diet you've committed to, your reward circuit brings up the strong argument of, yeah, but pizza tastes good right now. So in a continuum with willpower on the left and impulsiveness on the right, Phineas Gage would be on the far right. And on the left, you'd have people like disciplined athletes, accomplished writers, or well-trained musicians. Then it's safe to say that those with a drug addiction would be quite far to the right. This is because one of the effects of addiction is that it simultaneously gives more power to the reward system and decreases functionality in the prefrontal cortex, undermining willpower and enhancing impulsive behavior. That is, long-term goals begin to suffer at the expense of instant gratification. Anything that isn't quickly rewarding takes some level of motivation, willpower, or focus. For example, you need to be a little bit more to the left on this continuum to read a book and watch a TV show. And you'd have to be even farther to the left to start practicing the piano. So the question of this video is, can certain aspects of the internet lower prefrontal cortex function and enhance the reward system just enough to make you less able to do certain challenging things? Narcotics are so strongly addictive that the negative effects are obvious. But what about things that are less addictive and cause more subtle changes? For example, it might be hard to realize that where you could sit still and read a book for 2 hours before, now you get fidgety and bored after only 45 minutes. Or you could slowly have more and more days where you feel like you're too tired to do a project after getting home from work. But why? Well, the key neurochemical behind addiction is dopamine, as all addictive drugs cause a massive rise in dopamine. And as we'll talk about later, certain ways of using the internet can cause a particularly strong release of dopamine. You've probably heard about dopamine as it's a key player in the reward circuit. What isn't explained too often is the fact that dopamine isn't mainly for pleasure or liking, it's responsible for wanting, and the two don't always go hand in hand. In 1989, Kent Berridge and his colleagues did an experiment to test the hypothesis that dopamine demonstrates wanting and therefore liking. A chemical compound was used to destroy dopamine neurons in rats' brains, and this destroyed the rats' capacity for motivation, or wanting. The rats had no interest in food even if it was right in front of them, to the point that if the researchers didn't feed the rats through a tube, they would starve to death. Like humans, rodents actually make facial expressions, which researchers can monitor to understand whether a rat enjoyed the taste of something. They found that chemically destroying the dopamine neurons in the brain destroyed all motivation, but Berridge and his team were surprised to find that rats showed all the signs of liking when they got a sugar solution, even after depletion of nearly all brain dopamine. The conclusion was that the dopamine system controls wanting, but not liking. In certain situations, however, dopamine is released in response to receiving a reward. However, the purpose of this dopamine is not to make you feel good, but to learn how to get that reward again. Dopamine is released in response to receiving unexpected rewards. When an unexpected reward comes along, the brain says, "Whoa, I didn't see that coming. Hold up. What did we do to get that reward, and how can we get it again?" In a 1993 experiment in Switzerland, monkeys were put in a situation where if they pressed the right lever after a light came on, they got rewarded with some apple juice. At first, dopamine went up when they got the juice. After they got the hang of the task, however, dopamine began to rise when the light came on. What was happening was that the monkey's brain took note of everything that happened before getting the juice. The monkey understood that the light indicated that it could press a lever to get a reward, and dopamine was linked to the light, the cue for the reward. In this way, dopamine is important for learning and motivation. Dopamine keeps track of what behaviors done in what situations will get you rewards.
Solo laners and open themselves up to a counter pick for Cabo Shard as he will have final pick. Larson, Syndra, mid lane.
This is really good into Zoe as well, because Zoe can hop forward and you can actually throw down your ulti and it follows her back into that portal as well. So a lot of mid laners are very confident playing the Syndra into the Zoe. Also, just as an all-round champion, it's pretty solid as well. Jarvan will be this last pick here for Rogue, whether that will be top lane or in the jungle. Most likely top lane for Profit, as Vitality now hovering at the Hecarim as well. Might be Cabashard's counter pick here. It is locked in.
Ooh, Hecarim.